And, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Center for Innovation in Campus Mental Health webinar series. Thank you for joining us today. We are talking about teaching practices and student well-being. It takes a village. So just some housekeeping before we get started. If you are new to the platform, if you look under the Files function on your screen, you can download the Adobe Connect Guide for participants, and there's just a couple of pointers there to help you orient to the platform, like what's on your screen, but it's not too complicated. Essentially, participants are on mute while we are in the webinar. And then if you want to have a part in the discussions, if you want to ask any questions, you can use the chat function that should be on the bottom right of your screen. Other than that, we are just going to get started. I'm going to hand it over to our lovely presenters, Patty Hambler and Dr. Michael Lee from the University of British Columbia.
All right, thank you for joining us. I hope you folks are kind of enjoying the lovely sunshine as what we have over here in Vancouver. Today, actually, Patty and I are going to present to you some of the teaching practices that we find useful and that we've been applying in our university context. And also share with you some of our thoughts and insights, and with the hope that we can actually learn together with you and to learn from you as well.
Mm-hmm. So I think we'll just start with quick introductions so you know who we are and our roles at the university. So my name is Patty Hambler, and I work in student services at UBC. Currently, I'm the Director of Health Promotion and Education at UBC. Many other faculty members on campus who I see as champions in this area. So I'll just pass it over to Michael to do his quick intro as well.
Thank you, Patty. My name is Michael Lee. I'm an occupational therapist by training. Mental health is something very dear to my heart, and ever since I come over to campus, I started realizing the importance of addressing student well-being. In the past almost 10 years, I have the luxury of working together with Patty as well as a very capable crew to advance campus well-being, and not just only kind of doing separate events, but actually bring all those ideas, incorporate them into classes, and now we're actually doing a lot of things on campus to promote student well-being through classroom teaching as well. So that's why we thought this is kind of a very good opportunity for us to share some of our experience, and with the hope that we can actually learn together with you, as I trust actually you have lots of like brilliant ideas and many good strategies that you've been applying. So I see today as kind of a mutual learning opportunity from all of us.
Definitely, and I'm excited to be able to talk about the partnership that we've had over the past 10 years and just share the various projects throughout of this webinar today.
Now I realize this is like we're doing webinar and we might not be able to get immediate feedback from the audience, so should people feel like, well, your voice is kind of getting a little bit soft, or we can't really hear you well, let us know right away, and then we will try to get to retract and to kind of catch up on things that we kind of lost at that point as well.
Absolutely. We'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. We know that people are joining us today from all over Canada, I'm assuming mostly, and I'm assuming a lot from Ontario. We're coming to you today from Vancouver, BC, the Vancouver campus of the University of British Columbia, and we are located on the unceded, ancestral, and traditional territories of the Musqueam people. And for me, this is something that is really important to acknowledge all the more in our work in well-being, because I think that the land that we are on has a huge impact on our well-being as students, staff, and faculty. And I'm always grateful and want to acknowledge the Musqueam people for stewarding this land so that we're able to be in this place and have that opportunity to have nature and the land contribute to our well-being as we have this conversation, and also just to reflect on the importance of the relationships we have with our Indigenous neighbors and the people that we work with. So I just like to encourage everyone, no matter where you are from today, to take a chance to acknowledge the territory that you're on today as we join together on this webinar from across the country.
Thank you so much, Patty, for setting the stage for us.
Yep. On to a quick poll. We just want to get a sense of who's joined us today. We give this session to a range of different folks at our university, and so it's helpful for us as we're talking through the content today if we have a sense of who our main audience is as we're going through this webinar. So you have the poll up on your screen. It looks like we have about close to 50 people who have joined us so far this morning. And if you can just take a moment to indicate what your role is at the university. If you're a faculty member, if you work in student affairs or student services, perhaps you're a staff member in a teaching and learning department, maybe a TA or graduate student, maybe it doesn't look like we have any undergrad students yet, or maybe another role at the university. Great. So it looks like we have a large contingent of some of my fellow student affairs folks from across campus across the country who've joined us, and then and some faculty members and a few folks from teaching and learning departments who've joined us. So that's great.
It is a very interesting configuration, and I'm very pleased to see that we have diverse range of people joining us this morning or the afternoon, depends on where you are. So we'll try to frame our presentation to try to address your needs and your interests. However, should you have any particular questions that you would like Patty and myself to address, feel free to type it on the screen, and we will try to address whenever the appropriate times happen as well.
Mm-hmm. Great.
All right. So, at the start of our presentation, we'd like you to take a moment. Should you feel like comfortable, close your eyes, or if you feel like rather to just kind of look down on the table for a second and whatnot, we'd like you to take a moment to reflect on one of your best prof from your undergraduate or your graduate experience. Question we want to ask is, what made them a good professor? Did they offer support in a stressful time? Was there a particular way the professor taught that helped make it a positive learning experience? I hope by now you do have a little picture in your head. So keep this in mind as the session proceeds. Now, one of the key things we are learning in this work is that good teaching is inherently good for well-being. And we are hoping that by the end of the session, you will agree with what we believe in as well. But as we say, keep the picture in your head, and we'll come back and to revisit this particular image that you have in your mind. So we want to, at this point, share with you a video that we created, in particular from the student perspective. It's important that we hear from the student as to what they want and what they think will be best for their well-being as well as for their learning. So we will take a moment to watch this video. Oh, I'm jumping too quick, as you can tell. Oh, where are we? Bear with us, we just need to take a second to get things going back again.
For myself specifically, having sort of a personal assessment of what I'm learning, being able to see the value in it, understanding why I'm putting so much time and effort into what I'm learning, and being able to see sort of where I can take it in the future and how I can use it later on to not only help myself, but hopefully help others.
And what really motivated me was, one, how approachable the professor was, and the class environment. So for the class environment, it was my first time really working with my peers in a insane amount of group projects and group activities, and it really allowed me to get to know the people that I was working with.
The video that you just watched was actually a production that we created while we were working on a project looking at how teaching practice impact on student well-being. As I mentioned earlier, instead of just focusing on professor's perspective or the kind of the literature review and whatnot, we actually took an effort to try to interview and talk to students and ask them as to what really helped your mental health well-being. Without much surprise, actually, we hear the same message from faculty members as well. As you can see from the screen at this point, our campus did a survey in 2018 and surveyed all the teaching staff, including professors and instructors and session instructors, and asking them as to what are their perspective on how teaching impacts on student well-being. Now, without too much surprises, we realized actually 40% of the faculty members strongly agree with this statement, and 46% of faculty members agree with it. That actually speaks high volume to the fact that more than 80% of faculty members realize teaching actually impacts on the learner's well-being. So that actually kind of paints the backdrop as to why we really want to launch into this study. And we'll share with you some of our findings and some of the background as we kind of launch into this study program. So we know that student well-being is key to their academic success. And we also know that actually positive mental health will also result in students adopting a deeper approach in their learning, meaning that students will not just only kind of do the rote memory, but rather to take a more active stance to reflect and to see the relevancy to their life, and also extrapolating it beyond just the classroom, but think about their daily life application as well. We also know that actually depressed mood is a negative correlation with the academic performance, which again, for many of you sitting in front of a computer listening to a presentation, you realize that actually many of people who actually knock at the door seeking help, they actually say that yes, we are going through a bit of downtime as well. 43% of women and 34% of men reported that stress was negatively impacting their academic performance. And again, that's no surprise as well. So that brings us to realize actually there's a strong correlation between well-being and learning. For students who are in a better shape with the well-being, they tend to learn better in that sense.
I think we need to, sorry, just a technical glitch on our end. We need to switch back to the webinar view so that we can see what's happening on the webinar, because we're going to switch to another poll. So as Michael said, the research is definitely showing the connection between well-being and learning, and we also know that on our campuses over the past 5 to 10 years, this conversation has emerged about how can we support student well-being. So that kind of led us to dig deeper into the literature, and there's been a lot of really interesting things showing up in the more recent literature. In particular, there's a poll showing up on your screen right now. In a 2019, so just this year, earlier this year, there was a publication, the reference is at the bottom there. It was a qualitative study with university students in Australia, where researchers asked students what could be done to improve their well-being as university students. And researchers coded over 3,700 student suggestions for improving student well-being on campus. 7 distinct themes emerged, and those 7 themes are showing up on your screen right now. And so just based on your experience, which of these do you think students thought was the most important? So when they coded all of these and kind of looked at the results, what would be your hypothesis about what might show up? And as you're voting on that, I think it's also interesting just to reflect on, I think especially in student affairs and services, we often talk about the importance of student services and support. And what was interesting to me with this study was how much showed up that was related to the learning environment. So on this list, we have assessment, course design, instructors and their teaching practices, and then just even thinking about the larger impact of program administration. And these were things that students really brought up as being important in their well-being. when they made these suggestions. So it looks like we've got 3 that are showing up. People are suggesting maybe students said environment, culture, and communications, or instructors and their teaching practices, or student services and support. And in fact, in this study, what students really said was important. How do we get that to? There we go. So this slide is showing the results. So students identified academic teachers and teaching practices as the #1 area that could be improved to impact their well-being in the study. And you can see sort of the range across different faculties in the study, but that 37% identified academic teachers and teaching practices overall, 27% student services and support, so still very important in terms of what's happening, and then all of these other areas. So this study for us that came out really recently is just really reinforcing to the work that we've been doing, because we've been hearing this from students for a while as well. They're here as students, and they spend a large part of their time in the classroom or doing classroom-related activities, and so not surprisingly, that is what is having a really big impact in the area they want to see the most change in. So we're just going to share more about what then moving from the literature, I guess, to some of what we've seen. Before we get into what's happening at UBC, then we have this first study that I've just sort of acknowledged, looking at the student perspective, that university teachers and their teaching practices have the potential to enhance and support student mental well-being. In 2016, there was a study that really acknowledged that the most promising practices and ways that we can improve well-being included changes to the way students are taught and assessed. And then there's also a recognition that strengthening self-esteem and self-efficacy through pedagogy can have a big impact. So thinking about this relationship between well-being and learning, not only do we have a sense that well-being impacts learning, but also the learning environment impacts well-being. So the relationship is more complex. It's not just a one-way street. There's a really important interaction between what's happening in someone's learning and their own sense of well-being and mental health. So that's really what we've been looking at more closely. And then a last sort of interesting, broader context piece is that the American College Health Assessment also really acknowledged this broader well-being and learning environments movement that's happening. So in the fall of 2018, this article came out, and Simon Bates, who's here at the University of British Columbia, noted in the article that practices that foster well-being align very well with what we know are just effective teaching practices. So again, this just kind of shows how important that relationship is. So getting then to what we've been doing here at UBC, I'll pass it over to Michael to kind of share some of what that's been looking like.
Right. As you can see on the screen, even though it looks a little bit busy, but definitely that captures what we've been doing on campus in here at UBC. Well, I use the word busy as a matter of fact, we are doing quite a bit of things here to promote student well-being, and that actually speaks to us to how we frame our title. Actually, it takes the whole village to promote student well-being. In the past almost 10 years, Patty and her crew, together with many faculty members as well as many other stakeholders, been advancing campus well-being through multiple directions. In terms of looking at teaching practices that will promote student well-being, we also work together with students and faculty members to create a learning environment that will support learning in the right way. And that actually echoes with our earlier finding, as well as your response in the poll. You just kind of participated as well. We also kind of realized different kind of students have different focus as well. Undergraduate students have their particular needs. At the same time, graduate students as well as professional students also have different needs as well. In order to really address well-being, we need to look at needs of particular groups as well. so that we can try to create something tailor-made for different population groups instead of just having like one size fit all, which eventually fitting no one. So throughout the years, we've been trying to focus on different groups and try to address their needs in different particular ways. We also know that even though we look at like student groups separately, also try to support the well-being of faculty members, look at different practices and whatnot, by the end of the day, we need to address kind of academic tenacity of our students as well. So in the past couple of years, we actually focused very much on how we can actually enhance and promote students' academic tenacity so as to enable them to learn better, not just only for undergraduate students, which kind of tends to be a major focus. We also look at academic tenacity from the graduate student perspective as well, and how we can actually do that in an effective way. We also know that, as a matter of fact, that many faculty members as well as staff members are very busy. We don't have time to squeeze out another like half an hour, leave alone like a whole day, to really address like well-being in our busy life. So what we've been really focusing on is all these things have to be all integrated together so that well-being is not a separate agenda in the student's calendar, nor as a separate course that faculty members have to teach, but actually integrating all these ideas, including academic tenacity, well-being, throughout the whole curricula, so that everybody be speaking about like well-being throughout as well. With that earlier note, that speaks to us to some of the projects that we've been working on. Earlier, I talked about like academic tenacity projects that we are now working on, which is now in our later phase now. But the academic tenacity project actually goes back to our earlier project started in 2012, that we conducted a student mental health needs assessment. Knowing that students' mental health needs is kind of a very kind of intricate issues that are not being spoken about openly on campus easily. In particular, back in the 2012, we actually conducted a participatory action research method to involve students to tell us what are their needs in a very candid way, so that we have a full understanding as to what those are. Now, as you can imagine, actually students tell us very clear and loud that there are many, many things that impacting on their well-being. And one of those is actually like faculty members, the way how they teach, the way how they deliver the course, and the way how we assess students actually have a major impact on their well-being. So that brings us to the 2015 project, looking at what are some of the teaching practices that would influence student mental health and well-being. We spent a couple of years to look at it, interviewing students, interviewing faculty members, working with different stakeholders, trying to put out like big data to inform us as to what are some of the teaching practices that will promote well-being. From there, we learned another big lesson, realizing actually it's not just only about like teaching practice that influence the well-being, but overall we should hone in to look at more how to build academic tenacity in students so that they be able to deal with the stresses they have to face with. At the same time, building up the tenacity so that their learning will be something that they can really enjoy. Now, the top kind of section speaks to us to the project we've been doing over at UBC. But at the same time, we also noticed that there are like overall big climate happening behind the scene that are actually supporting us and pushing us along the way as to how we've been doing our studies in the past couple of years. Many of you realize 2012 was the launching of the Okanagan Charter. It happened kind of back in
2015.
Oh, 2015,
yeah.
Back in here as well. So that charter actually kind of paved a very broad picture and serves as a very good backdrop for us to push the agenda of addressing student well-being as a very important thing, not just only kind of as a standalone silo, but rather to be integrated throughout all kinds of learning environment. And that serves as a very strong backdrop to push UBC to integrate student well-being into our 2018 strategic plan. We are very pleased to see that actually that is a very important pillar in our strategic plan that delivered in 2018 that dovetails really well now with the 2019 well-being strategic framework, helping us not just only seeing that as the strategic plan, but actually rolling that out in a more concrete way as to how we can do it in our day-to-day life as well.
Yeah, and I think we can switch to the next slide there. For me, working in student affairs and thinking about the broader context beyond the university and at the university, all of these things have a huge impact on the work and the resources that we're able to apply to these various projects, and the ways we're able to bring this conversation forward. So I know for myself, having been involved in the Okanagan Charter conversations and then formally seeing UBC adopt that in 2016, there is this call to embed health into all aspects of campus culture, including within the academic mandate of the university. And then the call from the strategic plan, as Michael noted, to lead globally and locally in well-being is really important. So really looking to not only influence some of those conversations at the university, but then in a way benefit from that broader conversation that's happening. So we've just at UBC launched our well-being strategic framework. If you're interested in taking a look at that, you can just Google UBC Well-being Strategic Framework. And really within that, there are some targets identified that relate back to this work that we're doing in well-being and learning environments, including calls for more collaborative leadership, to focus on mental health and resilience, and also social connection, which are showing up as being really important for student well-being within learning context.
True. So now we will kind of walk you through some of the projects that we have done leading to what we are now doing. As I mentioned earlier, back in 2012, we conducted the mental health needs assessment using participatory action research method, and we interviewed with the intent to kind of increase awareness of mental health among students, faculty, and staff members. There are many feedback and many kind of findings coming out from that study. Again, folks, if you're interested, feel free to come to our website. As what Patty been mentioning, Google Mental Health Needs Assessment, UBC, you will be able to get to our website and find out the full reports that we have created. As I said earlier, actually improving teaching practice is one of the very outstanding, obvious findings that we have. That leads us to launching into our next project, which is actually looking at how teaching practice influence student mental health and well-being. We use a kind of multi-stages kind of approach to look at student well-being. This graph kind of presents you kind of the different stages and the research methodology. We use like surveys to reach out to our whole campus, which is around like 50,000 students at that point, and using that to inform kind of our backdrop, leading to us to conduct interviews for instructors as well as students who are interested kind of providing input to us. And then based on that, when we collect information, roll out another survey in 2016, and also roll out another round of interviews with instructors and students to further consolidate the data we collected and giving us more information as to what kind of teaching practices will be effective.
And I'll just jump in really quickly, Michael. I think an important thing to mention with this project is that we did really take an appreciative inquiry approach. And so we weren't asking people what's not working. We really wanted to ask students and faculty what is working. So in the surveys, we asked students what supports their well-being in the classroom. And we also asked students to nominate or name faculty members who they felt were supportive of their well-being. And those are the instructors we interviewed and said, what are you doing? Because students are saying that you are supportive of their well-being through what you're doing in your classroom, and that was how we were able to really dive a little bit deeper into learning what those practices actually looked like in a tangible sense, and then that helped inform the research overall and the two rounds of instructor interviews that we did. So again, if you're interested in any of these in terms of our methodology or approach, we have it listed on our website, but we're also happy to follow up and answer any questions that people have.
Absolutely. We are more than happy to respond to any of the questions you have as well. But in light of timing, we are moving on and kind of share with you some of the findings, not just only kind of re-speaking, but actually sharing with you a video that we created.
The student experience is complex and continuously evolving. As students work to achieve their academic goals, they're also balancing other priorities such as jobs, finances, and personal relationships. All of these factors impact student well-being. which significantly affects their capacity to learn. The learning environment also impacts student well-being. Thus, by shaping the learning environment, faculty play a key role in influencing the student experience, including learning and well-being. 3 factors have been shown to enhance student well-being in the learning environment. 1. When the student is feeling connected to other students and the instructor. 2. When the instructor recognizes that the student's life extends beyond academics and is flexible to the needs and challenges of the student. 3. When the instructor helps students understand why learning about a particular topic is important. There are many different ways faculty can foster well-being in learning environments. Some examples include fostering the instructor-student relationship, openly discussing well-being related topics, connecting students to resources, providing timely and constructive feedback, sharing passion and enthusiasm for a topic, encouraging students to ask questions, asking a student how they're doing, treating student input as valuable. How do you foster a learning environment that promotes student well-being and effective learning?
So the slide, the video that you just saw was actually one of our knowledge translation products that we created as a result of our study. Katie, I see your questions asking, can we share this slides? Absolutely, yes, we can. As you can see right now in front of you, actually we provide you with the URL of the blog that we have. In that blog, you will be able to see this particular YouTube video as well as other tools that we created as well. If you want to look at it right away, if you happen to have a cell phone, I also have the QR code attached to it as well. So if you scan it, you'll be able to get to our blog site right away. In that particular blog site, we have a fair amount of other information that you would find useful as well. And one of those is actually we created something called the Teaching Practice and Wellbeing Reflection Tool. This particular reflection tool is actually based on our research findings and informing us as to what are some of the effective teaching practices that would address well-being as identified by both students as well as faculty members and also supported by literature that we have looked up as well. So feel free to download our reflection tool and to use it as you like as well. In our reflection tool, we identify 3 major areas that would impact on student well-being, namely support for the whole student, meaning that students actually spending not just only like maybe 7 or 6 hours per day with us in the classroom, they actually have a life outside as well. And it's important for us as faculty members or staff members to realize and to acknowledge their life outside campus in order to address their well-being. Second thing, which is not a surprise, is when students learning in a very motivated way, when they're learning related to their daily living, when they see the purpose of learning, that is a very important way of addressing their well-being. It's not just only sitting in the classroom warming the chair, but rather seeing that that's something that would actually help them and engage them in their learning. That is a very critical thing to support their well-being. Last, but definitely not the least, is the sense of belonging and social inclusion. Students are not just only kind of sitting there and to learn by themselves, but rather they want to learn together with other people, building relationship and sense of community together with folks sitting around the classroom. So that is one of the very big topics that we identified in there. Of course, I mean, in our reflection tool, we have multiple strategies that we identified. And I don't think we have enough time to cover each and everything in there. So we invite you to actually come to our website, take a look, and to see what are some of those strategies in there. In front of you, we actually kind of portion of one of the strategies that we identified and share with you as to what you might be able to see in there. The color coding that you see in the screen, we do have something in the lighter blue and in darker blue, and then actually in very deep dark color. We intentionally kind of like put them in that way as we realize actually some of these strategies will be easy to do. For example, like having a smile or introducing yourself in the class. Those are more easy to do. Then trying to learn the names and using student names in the classroom. I have to acknowledge, if you have a classroom as large as like 500 students, it's going to be quite a bit of challenge to remember all their names. So that's why we have like different strategies in here. Now, mindful of fact, in fact, we've been talking quite a while now, and you've been keep hearing our voices. So we want to kind of open the floor at this point and inviting you to think about, like, within the lesson here, what are some of the strategies that you have used to enhance students' sense of belonging and social inclusion? Or what are some of the ways that we haven't mentioned in here, and yet you would like to introduce, or yet you have tried already, and share those insights with us as well.
And we want to recognize that knowing that a lot of you are working in student services, I know that you probably still do a lot of teaching, maybe in different contexts, but you also may have interactions with faculty, or again, thinking back to even your own experience as a student, what kinds of strategies have you used or have you seen others use to enhance belonging and social inclusion within a learning environment? And this is an exercise that we do with faculty. So we often get invited now to speak with faculty members and TAs sometimes as well, and we're able to come forward. We share the project, we share the video results, and then we share the reflection tool and ask people to think for themselves what of these strategies they're already using, but also what does that actually look like in their classroom, and then share with each other. So we just wanted to provide a chance to see if anyone had any suggestions or ways this could happen, just as an example of how that could play out.
At this point, we invite you, if you can, share with us some of the strategies that you have used in enhancing well-being and social inclusion. We also noticed there are a few questions from the audience as well, and we will address those as we go along as well.
So it looks like Sandra suggested explicitly explaining the importance of connection, and I know I've heard of some faculty doing that and actually encouraging. One of the most recent conversations I had with a faculty member said that what she does is at the beginning of the class, she asks everyone to introduce themselves to the person sitting on either side of them, and then to go a step further, if they're comfortable sharing contact information with each other, and then she says to them, you will notice when your fellow students aren't here, and if someone doesn't show up, I would really encourage you to reach out and check in with them and see how they're doing, see if they need to find out what they missed during class, and really encouraging that kind of peer-to-peer connection and support to happen, especially in larger classes where as a faculty member you may not notice if someone's not there, but the students will notice because students usually sit relatively in the same spot, and if that person that's normally to the right isn't there, just really encouraging the students to reach out to each other. So that's one example of a strategy that I've heard where faculty are making it really explicit to say how important those peer-to-peer relationships are. I don't know if you have any other examples you can think of, Michael.
I do actually. Thank you so much, Sandra, for pulling this out. I would kind of add on one more thing. It's actually, even though you mentioned like explicitly doing kind of the connections, actually a lot of these things can be very easily done in the class just by introduce yourself to the other people sitting next to you. Not that I have a new strategy. Actually, I have a little anecdote to share with the audience as well. Actually, my daughter is now doing a huge big class with like 300 students in the classroom. She missed a class, but actually one of her classmates who sat close by to her sent her an email or text the other day saying, I noticed in fact you were not in the class. Are you okay? So it was like perking her up so much on the next day. She thought, wow, someone realized my absence. And that actually kind of speaks volume in terms of like how they really create a sense of belonging. And my daughter was so delighted about it and reached out back to the student and said that, yes, I was okay. I wasn't doing too well on the day, but I'm okay now. Can I kind of tap onto your notes as well? That actually helped her to kind of catch up as well as to kind of build a sense of community.
And I think what we heard with this theme, what really stood out for me in the project with students, basically at the heart of what they were saying is, in terms of the instructor-student relationship, was we want to know that our instructors are people too. And so, you know, when it says introducing yourself, what we actually heard from faculty or from students was the importance of faculty members introducing themselves in a way that went beyond just their professional introduction, but maybe shared a little bit about their personal life, to the degree that you know, you feel comfortable doing that, but sharing something about, you know, either the pets that you have or your family or your passions outside of the classroom, or even if you know, had a hard time, you missed the bus this morning and, you know, you're kind of feeling a little bit out of sorts, sharing those kinds of personal stories and anecdotes were really helpful for students to see faculty members as a person that they could connect with and feel more comfortable approaching if they had any concerns or questions. So that came out as a really strong theme with this belonging and social inclusion.
Right. Actually, that speaks not just only kind of for the well-being of students, actually that can also address kind of well-being for faculty members as well. And that reminds me of one thing that's actually a couple of years ago, as I was standing in the bus stop, actually a student kind of pulled his car by and said, hey, come on and join my car as well. And I thought, now this is a pretty good sense of community as well. So I mean, as I said earlier, I mean, it's not really something that will spend a whole bucket of hours to talk about a sense of community and try to build that. But at the same time, I mean, just do little things. Let's do it if you are very approachable, you are open, you are someone who interested in kind of their issues, and they will kind of be interested to know more about you and ask you questions and be able to kind of build that sense of community as well.
I just want to take a moment before we move on to the next section to address a couple of questions, because I think these are really important. So, and this often comes into this conversation. So Melissa is asking, do we know of any work being done to support instructor-faculty member well-being? So I just want to take a moment to speak to that, and then we can both share some of what's happened at UBC. So I would definitely say that every time we have this conversation about student well-being and the connection to the learning environment, and rightly so, the conversation about faculty well-being also comes up. And so a couple of things that, that we're doing at UBC. First of all, we're making space for that conversation. So when we do bring this forward, often the way we put together a workshop like this, if we're in person, is we have 3 themes that came out of this research, and so we'll break into 3 different tables where people can talk about these themes, but we often have a 4th table where people can talk about faculty well-being and how that also connects, and what strategies faculty are doing to address their own self-care and mental health and well-being, because we recognize that faculty well-being impacts student well-being and vice versa. And then also, I'm really excited because at the University of British Columbia, with the adoption of the Okanagan Charter and the Wellbeing Strategic Framework that's just come out, we are really elevating the conversation to not only address student well-being, but also faculty well-being, and really thinking about the ways in which we can ensure that's always part of the conversation. We're also really lucky that we have health promotion staff within our human resources department at UBC whose job it is to be thinking about these issues, and not just from a programmatic approach. You know, they do some amazing programs like mindfulness and so forth, but also from a systemic approach. And so we actually have a person at UBC whose job it is to work with leadership within departments and faculties to be thinking about the culture and the climate within the faculty and how that impacts faculty well-being.
Right, very true.
Do you want to mention this community of practice?
Exactly.
Yeah.
One thing add on to what Patty been saying about us. Actually, now we have a community of practice for all the faculty members, as well as anyone involved in teaching, including TA as well, to join this particular community of practice in order to support each other, as well as to navigate through this kind of a little bit challenging landscape as well, because actually sometimes we have to learn about like where the boundaries are as to how we can do it within our own capacity, at the same time addressing our own well-being, but at the same time addressing kind of student well-being. So there are lots of like intricate issues that we need to navigate, and I have to think that we are learning as we're going along as well. And leveraging different resources and having this particular COP actually enables us to have a very safe space to explore, to learn, and to talk about like our own well-being as well. The bottom line is realizing that we are not alone by ourselves, yet we are all together and we are learning together and we can journey as we go along as well.
For sure. So I'm also seeing a question about any work being done on faculty supportive students with mental health issues. So I'm going to come back to that question at the end because we just have one short section and then we'll open it up for discussion, and I think that's an important piece. Most of the work we're talking about today are the proactive strategies, but there's definitely a role for faculty and a responsive role in supporting student mental health, so I will come back to that, but I just want to get to talking about one last project that we're engaged in right now that's focused on academic tenacity. So this project is called Increasing Student Capacity for Academic Success, Deeper Learning, and Well-Being. It's a collaborative project, as all of the others have been, with faculty, staff, and students participating. So what that looks like, we're currently in year 3 of this 3-year project. All of these projects at UBC have been funded by the Teaching and Learning Enhancement Fund. So we've been very lucky to have the support of the university. And I think one of the reasons why we've been successful in receiving funding from that source is because it is a collaborative project with faculty, staff, students, and educational leaders. But this academic tenacity project is asking which educational practices in which types of learning environments can positively impact student well-being, learning, and academic success. So what we were hearing from faculty members when we shared the teaching practices project results, they wanted to hear from us more about, well, how can you actually show me through results if this practice is going to have an impact on student well-being? And so we wanted to bring some rigor and assessment into the process by piloting a series of strategies over 2 years and assessing the impact of those strategies on student well-being. And now in year 3, we're continuing to analyze all the data we've collected, starting to share what we've learned, think about the ways we can apply these strategies in new contexts. We're continuing to work with Michael and other faculty champions and really think of the way we can support our faculty champions and just continue to engage in a campus-wide conversation about well-being and learning environments. So these are conversations that I get to have every week. I just had one yesterday with an associate dean academic in one of our faculties, and I think that's just ongoing work that we see happening. So I'm just going to touch on what this project has addressed. So this construct of academic tenacity is really about resilience in academic settings, and it's coming out of the K-12 literature. So the reference is there at the bottom, Dweck, Walton, and Cohen, 2014. And we wanted to see how this construct might apply in a higher education context. Academic tenacity is defined as mindset and skills that allow students to look beyond short-term concerns to longer-term or higher-order goals and withstand challenges and setbacks to persevere towards goals. And academic tenacity in this construct is seen as having 3 components: belonging, mindsets, and self-regulation. So belonging, again, coming up is really important, just as it did in our previous project. So students believing that they belong in school, in their program, and they feel comfortable in their classroom with their peers and instructors. So just showing that this theme is coming up consistently in all of our research and the broader research that's happening. Self-regulation also coming up is important. So the student's ability to persist and remain engaged in complex tasks, and also able to enact effective learning strategies and manage themselves in a way that helps them to learn best. And then also looking at mindsets, where students are able to understand challenges leading to growth, and they view their effort as something that contributes greatly to their achievement in their academic setting. So what we've been doing with this project over the past, the first 2 years, we looked at social belonging, self-regulation, mindset, and goals, and we worked with a number of faculty members from across the university. We took the lead from the instructors in terms of which of these areas they wanted to explore, and also in what context they wanted to apply those strategies. So some faculty were teaching really large first-year science courses, some were teaching really small seminar graduate courses, and then we even had professional programs participate, like OSOT and law. So we had project sites over all of the different faculties and departments that you can see on your screen. And that just allowed us to really look at this from an interdisciplinary lens, so we're not just looking within the Faculty of Arts or Sciences, but really broadly at the whole university. And with this project as well, it's really exciting for me as a health promotion specialist, because I'm thinking about our specific context also here at UBC, which was an important piece of this, because I acknowledge that the students we have and the programs we have are unique to our campus, and I think while we can apply these to other contexts, that's an important element of the project. So this is just a snapshot of some of the strategies that we employed in working with the faculty members, so and how they relate back to the constructs of social belonging, self-regulation, mindset, and goals. So some of the strategies that were used were embedding self-compassion in courses. So this was specifically in a research methods course where students were feeling anxious about the math and the research methodology, and so just embedding some self-compassion interventions throughout the course. That was in a kinesiology class. Also promoting social belonging and self-regulation through what was called an academic scholars program. So in this context, students were able to participate in different activities that the faculty member and our student services team believed would have an impact on their social belonging and self-regulation. And then just a number of others. I won't go into detail for all of them, but just as this slide hopefully shows you that there were diverse strategies that we were looking at. And then in all of them, we collected a range of data. So the assessment approach that we took was also multifaceted. All of the projects had an assessment strategy that we used a combination of validated measures, such as a scale called the Academic Buoyancy Scale. We also used survey questions that we developed as a team or that were coming from our university-wide undergraduate experience survey. And we also had some qualitative methods where we did interviews and focus groups. So it just depended on the individual project, how we approached that. With these two that are showing up as examples here, so just a little bit more in depth of what we did. So in one project, students in a first-year biology course had the opportunity to engage in activities outside the classroom, and then they were prompted to reflect on their learning, and they gained participation marks. And the expected outcome here was enhanced self-regulation through successful use of learning strategies, and also increased participation with campus activities and communities on campus. And then in another project, students in a psychology research methods course were invited to engage with their faculty member in informal interactions outside of the classroom. So this was our infamous Bagels with Ben project, where a faculty member held his office hours in a different informal setting. It was a group setting where students were invited to come together, eat bagels with a faculty member, talk about some of the issues in the course. He introduced learning strategies, but then also it was just a space for students to connect with each other and connect with the faculty member, and looking at how that impacted the students' sense of belonging and their sense of academic confidence in that program. So these were two of the examples of the projects, and then for both, we used a variety of different types of assessment methods. And we're not going to get into any of the details in this, but as well, we're working hard at UBC right now on a new website that will launch probably in January, and it will share all of these different projects and some of the initial results that we're seeing from it. And I know that we are going to be getting to questions in a minute, but I'm noticing that in particular, how did you gather faculty buy-in for these various projects? So I just want to address that because it's related directly to this part, and then we'll open it up more broadly. So this, I would say, has been almost like a snowball effect at our university. It started with Michael. Michael and I started working together in 2012, and he had already been working with his students and really trying to understand the student experience. We had the NCHA data at the time, so we had this quantitative data, but we really wanted to understand it from a qualitative perspective. So we started working together, and then as we worked, we found faculty members who were champions and who were asking the same questions. And I would say that it's really been a process of growth over the past 8 years where people have talked to their colleagues and said, oh, have you heard of this? Do you want to get involved? And people will now come to us and say, oh, have you talked to so-and-so? He's doing this really interesting thing in his course. Maybe he wants to assess the impact of that. Or have you talked to this person? She's expressed an interest in learning more. So I think it's really been a snowball effect, and we're really getting to an interesting tipping point, I would say, at our university, where it is a much larger conversation. And we've also partnered with our Center for Teaching and Learning and Technology. So that's been an important partnership as part of this, because they are already interacting with faculty members. So I'd say it's been very collaborative, and I never turn down the opportunity to connect with any faculty members who've expressed an interest. But that's definitely been a long time in the work. So it didn't happen overnight, but it's when people start learning about these projects, they sort of come out of the woodwork and express interest.
And I agree with you totally, Patty, in a way that, it's not something that would happen just overnight, but you have to take time and you take each and every opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
The most critical key that I can see it is find whoever the champion. May they be faculty members as a faculty champion, or even staff members as the staff champion as well. You need a point person to spread the word around. Word of mouth is very, very effective. And then once when you get a few more person kind of engage in it, then those few person become your ambassador and to spread around the word around even further for you. We know this is not easy. However, starting having a few people who actually buy into this one, that would make life so much quicker and easier as well. At the beginning, we do ask you to think about a faculty member that kind of supported your well-being. At this point, I'm pretty much wrapping up our presentation now. We'd like you to kind of think back as to who that person was and what had that person done to support your well-being. Did that person actually create a supportive learning environment that we shared earlier as well? We have to acknowledge, as a matter of fact, actually many of us have been doing many of these things, bits and pieces here and there already. So we want to acknowledge the good work that all of us have been doing, but at the same time, we also want to encourage us to put our strength together and to try to move this agenda forward as well. As what Patty said, and now we come to the tipping point that we see it's no longer just a little tiny project here and there, or some of us do it just out of our own goodwill. But now we can try to explore how we can systemically pushing some of these things together. And that might actually come back to Katie's, your earlier question about the COP that we have at UBC. Right now, the COP is mainly for, the COP is mainly for the UBC folks. However, we're envisioning that we will be able to push it further and to kind of reach out to other universities and even across the country as well. If that's kind of the desire from audience growth, from kind of the wider community. So we are kind of open to this kind of discussion further as well, and we'd love to hear some of your thoughts and comments and to see how we at UBC can collaborate with the larger community and to bring this news to wider folks as well. Great.
I think we've addressed most of the questions that have come up so far. The last slide that I'm going to share here is just a resource page that you can go to at UBC where we link to everything we've talked about today. There's a link to information about the community of practice, the teaching practices project, the video, the reflection tool, the research, all of the pieces that we've mentioned today, you can link to from here. And the wellbeing.ubc.ca is also the site where we're going to be launching a new Wellbeing and Learning Environments landing page that I mentioned that should be up in January. So you can check out the teaching and learning resources now, and then I would encourage you to come back in the new year and check out the Wellbeing and Learning Environments Initiative, where we're going to be sharing some of the results of the Academic Tenacity project and continuing to develop and share resources that we're developing here at UBC. And for me, these are all open educational resources. We are very happy to share and for people to adapt resources to their community. So yeah, so I think we'll stick around for a couple of minutes in case anyone have any questions that we still want to address. But in the meantime, maybe we'll just formally kind of wrap things up at this point since we're at time. And then we'll stick around maybe just for 5 minutes after this if the platform is available to answer any questions that we might have.
And likewise, Patty and I will welcome any email or any correspondence as well. If you go to earlier our blog site, there are ways that you can communicate with us, and there you have our access to our email address as well. So by all means, communicate with us, and let's kind of keep the ball rolling and to build a healthier community as well. Once again, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. We will be hanging around in here and to answer any questions that you would like to have.
Thank you so much, Michael and Patty. That was an excellent presentation. I think people found it very, very useful. Thank you to everyone for joining in to our webinar. I hope that was useful, and I'm sure it was. Just so you know, this webinar, a recording was made of the webinar and it's going to be posted on our website, so feel free to share it with others from your department or other colleagues because it's really good knowledge and we really want to get the word out there. But otherwise, again, thank you so much to our speakers for sharing the great work that they've done.
Thanks for hosting us, Perlin. Yeah. And if you downloaded the slides, I'll just mention we've got a number of references that we've got 2 pages of references we've listed here. And hopefully, if you're working on any of these projects within your own context, you'll find these helpful. We try to stay on top of the literature in terms of what's going on with this conversation. We've been not as great at publishing ourselves, but we are working on a review paper at this time where we're hoping to share some of what we learned. We're learning in the Academic Tenacity project, so that's in the works, and we hope to be able to eventually get some of this work published. And then in the meantime, we just want to share these because it can be helpful if you're applying for funding for projects or trying to bring forward to your leadership, why it's important to invest in these strategies, and sometimes looking at the literature is really helpful. I'm not seeing any questions coming through, so maybe. Great. Okay, so thank you for joining us, and I think we'll wrap up there. And as Michael said, feel free to reach out to either of us if you are looking for further information.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Okay.
And
thank you,
everyone who was on the webinar. When I end the session, we are going to have a survey that pops up at the end, and that's just for us to know how you found the webinar, and it's going to be helpful for us to schedule future webinars just in terms of feedback and thinking about what kind of topics you would like to see in the future. So thank you everyone once again, and have a lovely rest of the day.
Bye.
Bye now. Thank you.